Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the day's top news stories and bring you the latest updates. I'm your host, Walter. Today, we're looking at a developing story involving Cuba, Venezuela, and the United States. Reports have emerged that the U.S. is seeking to negotiate a transition in government with high-ranking officials close to the current Cuban regime. This comes after the successful ousting of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, which was backed by the U.S. The Trump administration appears to be taking a similar approach with Cuba, focusing on stability and a gradual transition rather than a military strike. The U.S. has been imposing strict sanctions on Cuba, including a quarantine on energy imports to the government, which has led to a humanitarian crisis on the island. The Cuban economy is teetering, and the country is facing significant challenges in terms of poverty and lack of growth. According to sources, the U.S. is seeking to attract investment to Cuba's economy, potentially offering incentives for officials to cut deals and move away from the socialist ideology that has defined the Castro regime for decades. However, this approach also raises questions about the potential for chaos and mass migration, which the administration is keen to avoid. The situation is complex, with multiple players involved, including Congress, the State Department, and various interest groups. We'll be keeping a close eye on developments and bringing you updates as more information becomes available. It's worth noting that this story has sparked debate about the role of the U.S. in shaping the futures of Cuba and Venezuela. Some argue that the administration's approach is necessary to promote democracy and stability, while others see it as an attempt to exert undue influence over sovereign nations. As we continue to follow this story, we'll be examining the various perspectives and bringing you expert analysis. For now, it's clear that the situation in Cuba is at a critical juncture with significant implications for the region and beyond. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're diving into the latest developments in the ongoing conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. The situation continues to escalate, with both sides exchanging blows and suffering losses. According to recent reports, 4 U.S. crew members were killed in a plane crash in western Iraq, bringing the total number of U.S. troops killed in the conflict to 11. The U.S. military has confirmed that the crash was not due to hostile or friendly fire, but rather an incident involving another aircraft. The Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group of Iran-backed armed factions, has claimed responsibility for downing the U.S. military refueling aircraft. However, the U.S. Central Command has stated that the circumstances of the incident are still under investigation. Meanwhile, U.S. officials have warned that the conflict will likely result in more American military deaths as Tehran retaliates against U.S. and Israeli strikes. The U.S. has deployed a large number of aircraft to the Middle East to take part in operations against Iran, highlighting the risks not just of combat operations, but also of refueling aircraft in the air. In related news, Iranian officials have reported that the country's newly appointed supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is lightly injured but continuing to operate. The U.S. has emphasized its military strikes aimed at knocking out Iran's missile and drone capabilities, as well as its navy. Despite these efforts, Iranian drones have been spotted flying into neighboring countries, including Kuwait, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Oman. As the situation continues to unfold, we'll keep a close eye on developments and bring you updates as more information becomes available. The conflict has sparked concerns about regional stability and the potential for further escalation. We'll be exploring these issues in more depth in future segments. Welcome back to Concrete Block. As we wrap up today's show, let's take a look at the latest news from the world of finance and technology. We've got a slew of updates for you, from earnings reports to new deals and developments. First off, Dick's Sporting Goods released its fourth quarter earnings, which were upbeat but came with mixed guidance for the current fiscal year. The company's adjusted per-share earnings fell short of analysts' estimates, causing the stock to drop 6% in pre-market hours. In other news, Ulta Beauty issued cautious guidance for 2026, forecasting earnings per share that fell below Wall Street's expectations. This, combined with a fourth quarter earnings miss, sent the company's stock tumbling 8% in pre-market trading. On the tech front, ByteDance signed a $2.5 billion deal with Nvidia to purchase chips outside of China, according to Bloomberg. And in a surprise move, Adobe's CEO announced his departure after 18 years at the helm, causing the company's stock to drop. We also saw some movement in the cryptocurrency space, with Bitcoin rising 2% and sending stocks like Strategy and Coinbase up around 3%. Meanwhile, gold headed for its second weekly decline as crude oil traded near $100 per barrel amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. In inflation news, the Federal Reserve's preferred measure of inflation rose 0.4% in January, in line with estimates. And finally, the U.S. trade deficit decreased by 25% in January, thanks to a surge in exports. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.